topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Chicago. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Today, we are actually talking on the legal end of it. And we know out there, I think about this all the time, the day of this show. First of all, we're so blessed to have such an incredible expert in this area. But I think about all the people who are suffering financially, who are up at nights. And I'm talking, when I say financially, I'm also including if you're behind with the dreaded IRS. And what I love about the show today is you're going to find out that you've got alternatives if you're having deep financial trouble, or if the IRS is coming after you. Today's show, I'm telling you, believe it or not, is going to be a make you feel better show. Let me introduce you to our expert for the next 50 minutes of our show, attorney Kevin Benjamin. Hi, Kevin.
How you doing, Steve? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing good. We're going to make people feel better today, that they do have choices, aren't we?
Sure, absolutely.
Kevin, tell people about, you're in Chicago. Tell people about your firm.
Well, okay, Benjamin Legal Services is basically a boutique-style firm. We do debt relief, bankruptcy. There's different kinds of bankruptcies. There's getting out of debt. There's debt restructuring, Chapter 7, 13, 11, 12, 15, Chapter 9. We discuss briefly all that right now, but we handle all kinds of bankruptcy and debt restructuring, mortgage issues, or even restructure them through Chapter 13 or Chapter 11, paybacks, debt settlement, tax resolution. A lot of people with the IRS problems, they have tax levies or liens, or they owe the money, and maybe try to get an offer of compromise or see what they qualify for, resolve the tax debt, get the IRS off their back. And that's basically what we do.
Right before we came on, I was reading, we got a text from a listener saying, I really enjoy your show on bankruptcy. How come we never hear about loan modification or short sales anymore?
Because let's talk about loan modifications. A lot of what you heard about years ago were scams, So there's IRS scams, there's tax scams, there's foreclosure, debt settlement, banking, all kinds of scams out there. So, around 08 and 09, when they had the last crash, and people would have all the foreclosure stuff, there was a lot of short sales or loan modifications, modify your loan. A short sale is basically selling your property for less than it's worth and trying to have the bank agree to it. But then you got to agree to have the negative equity erased, in which case, even if they agree to it, you may get a 1099, could be a taxable event. So there's all kinds of issues. So what would happen is you would be in foreclosure, you get all these letters. Maybe from me, you get a letter from a bankruptcy attorney, get out of debt. Or for loan modification or short sale, talking about property that's in foreclosure or behind or in default, right? So save your property through Chapter 13, through Chapter 11, The real estate agents would say, hey, short sale, that solves your problem because that's how they make their money. And then the loan mod people who aren't lawyers or brokers, they decided to jump into the business, modify your loan. Because when the government stopped people from modifying them in bankruptcy, sort of, they made this thing called the anti-modification provision in 2005 to stop homeowners from saving their house, though non-homeowners could do it. For investment properties, farms, second homes. They made it difficult for your own property than when you care about. There are exceptions to that. But so these companies jumped in there and say, hey, let's just modify your loan. So they can't really do anything for you. So the real way to modify a loan, if you're just trying to modify your loan, you could apply to the bank, but it's really mother may I. They give you these forms. They pretend like they're doing something for you. Then they say, resubmit this. They didn't get this. Meanwhile, they have what's called dual tracking, which they finally got around to dealing with. That means, like in Illinois, for example, there's a lien state and a judicial state for foreclosure. A lien state, like most states, is like Illinois, meaning they have to foreclose as a lawsuit, a summons and a mortgage foreclosure complaint. And there's timelines and deadlines, and if you're going to try the case or defend it or the discovery, whatever you're doing, but tick tock before they can get the house. If you do nothing, they get the house at this point. Other things, it's a farther timetable. So they start the time going, they put you in foreclosure. Now they're playing games with you. Don't get a lawyer. Don't hire someone like Kevin to stop the foreclosure and make me do this thing or et cetera. We'll modify. Here, just submit the application. We'll review it for you. But they don't really want to do it. So they're just kind of rolling down the clock. And next thing you know, people think, this is back then, a lot of people thought, well, I'm okay. They're working with me. They're not working with you. They're just going to take your house. So then they deny you when they get closer to the date, the deadline for taking your house, and they take your house. So then Congress did something about that in the state of Illinois. They made it so, like, if you were doing a modification within, like, say, for example, 37 days of a sale date or et cetera, different deadlines that they couldn't do certain things. But all they were doing is, just waiting for the deadline, having you not represent anybody. So there's not as many of those anymore. A lot of the loan mod people got in jail or other things. Then during COVID, there was a stop on foreclosures. Okay. No one's in foreclosure. No one's losing at home. So there's no short sale to do, and there's no, loan mod to do because nothing was happening. So that's why you haven't heard about that for that. Loan mods right now, see, back then, there's a thing called 80-20. A lot of people had 80-20 loans. That's one mortgage, but one loan's for 80%, one's 20%. They were doing these things, and the ninja loans, no doc, it's no interest, all this stuff, right? So what people don't understand was in certain types of bankruptcy, like Chapter 13 or something, you could do what's called a lien strip. So you had a mortgage for 80%, right? $100,000,
right.
$20,000 for whatever it is. And sometimes if you're underwater, the second mortgage was wholly unsecured because the value was decreasing, in which case you could strip it and make it unsecured loan. So if you were paying, $2,000 on your first mortgage, and you're paying, $1,000 on your second mortgage, that's $3,000, right? But if I could second mortgage, well, now I'm only paying $2,000. Well, it's got a $1,000 modification. Now you're paying that back as an unsecured debt. So depending on other analysis, you may pay that on pennies on the dollar, or some people were paying it in full, so maybe it didn't work out. That's why you got to have a professional look at that for you, okay? But people didn't need mods. I can't tell you how many people would call me back then. I need a mod. I can't afford to pay. Well, but you're paying $700 a month on credit cards. So you're not going to qualify for a mod because the mortgage is secured. You got to fill out your budget. You're paying the credit cards because it's, you're not paying your mortgage. They're not going to lower your mortgage just to have you pay unsecured debt. You don't qualify. There was income ratios. So there's basic qualifications, but the loan mod people wouldn't tell you that. They tell you got to call them, and everyone qualifies, and then no one really does. So oftentimes, even though they had the law changes in bankruptcy, you could just restructure it or do a lien strip, and you were done. Also, in Chapter 13, for example, You can restructure your car sometimes, or other debts, or get rid of the credit cards, pay some bills in full, some bills not, or do a Chapter 7 first, and now your $40,000 in credit card debt of $700, whatever it was a month, is gone. Now you can resubmit and change the circumstances. You know what I'm saying? So all kinds of things, but these companies are just marketing companies. They just have the call centers, and they tell you whatever you want to hear to get your $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, whatever they're charging, right? And they were just kind of ripping you off. These days, like in Northern District of Illinois, or in Chicago area, there's a loss mitigation, mortgage mitigation program as part of the 13, which the court can kind of supervise, which is nice, depending on if the parties are going to do that. Otherwise, people call me for modification all the time, but I can do a quick analysis, but it's not a magic formula like everyone thinks, oh, I'm entitled to a modification. Oftentimes you're not, okay? Depends on your income, your other debts, what you're doing, and all kinds of other analyses. So also, when you apply for a loan mod, you should really ask for loss mitigation options. You want to apply for all your loss mitigation options. So they review you for short sale, loan mod, property, whatever you want to do. You could do a foreclosure. You could do, you can get the property back. You know what I'm saying? You can make them take it or ask them to take it. Deed in lieu of foreclosure can be a solution, depending on whether you're saving or not. Oftentimes, by the way, people think they want to save it, but maybe you don't. I mean, if you're underwater so much, what are you trying to save? You know what I'm saying? So in a nutshell, you don't hear about a lot of the loan mods anymore because all those scams are going away. A lot of it was because of COVID. There's no foreclosures. Now foreclosures are upticking again, so you may start hearing some scams again. But also, that's not really how you do it. Those people are in jail. That scam's over. They're into the new scams now, whatever that is. So it never worked. If you weren't a lawyer doing it, they'd be able to restructure. It wasn't going to work. If you're simply a call center, ABC, loan modification, attorney owned, all the BS crap they want to would tell you, because the real way to do it is more of a pre-litigation defense. There's a RESPA, they revised what's called a Reg X and Reg Z, and what is required by the banks. And oftentimes the amount you're behind, maybe there's garbage fees in there, or they weren't calculating it right, or the payments you were making weren't being properly applied. See, that's a legal thing. You got to have a lawyer look at that and some experts, and then now you create some defenses. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a countersuit. If that applies. And sometimes it does, because the banks were scamming and they made mistakes, but oftentimes, they weren't. And but that's legal work, which means you can't scale it up. And what these mod companies wanted to do is scale things up. They don't want to, no one's looking at your file. No one's looking at your case, just paperwork and pay me, right? So in reality, if you hire a lawyer, like some guys that say a couple $100 a month, no, they're not doing any work. It's work. You got to set these things up, make them apply to the law, and someone's got to pay attention to your file, which is not a volume-based business where we're just doing all this stuff. The next scam was, after that was going away, was the mortgage review. They would do these pretty reports on violations, and they weren't real violations because they're doing it to some software. You got to do it by hand. You got to look at it, and they're selling those, and they're telling people, take this and it saves your home, and it's just a piece of paper, a report that's not evidence unless you could make the person who's doing it an expert witness and qualify them on the stand and show it's actually real instead of some BS. So those are the next scam. It's always a scam.
Well, I've got a long question, or I got a short question, but I know it's got to be a long answer because this is what everybody wants to know. There's all different types of bankruptcy, the different chapters. Tell us about each chapter.
Okay. So generally speaking, when someone hears the word bankruptcy, they're thinking about getting out of debt. That's chapter 7. Okay. Talk more about that in a second. Chapter 9 is for governments, when Orange County, California files bankruptcy, something like that. Chapter 12 is for farmers if they're restructuring their debt. There's a chapter 15 is more international, but otherwise there's a chapter 11, which is a corporate restructuring of debt, or an individual can do a chapter 11. It's more of a more complicated person, but sometimes they can do it, or sometimes they have to. Now, chapter 11, there's a regular chapter 11, there's a small business chapter 11, there's a real estate chapter 11, and then a couple of years ago, there was a sub 5 chapter 11, which is just ways to do different things, make them faster and streamline them. So then there's a thing called chapter 13, which is a personal restructuring of debt. The way a corporation goes chapter 11, but it's simpler, more affordable, more streamlined. Okay, 5 years max. Okay, but there was debt limits, and they have this ridiculous, archaic debt limit stuff for 13s. X amount of dollars for secured debt, and Y amount of dollars for unsecured debt. Otherwise, you're over the debt limit. Don't qualify for chapter 13, but you could do a chapter 11, but now it's more complicated, more expensive. Now, during COVID, they passed a nice little rule. They streamlined what's the difference, secured debt, unsecured debt for debt limits, and also why not raise them, okay? And when they had this sub 5 thing for corporations, for example, or maybe even some individuals in certain cases, it was like 2.75 million, right? So they streamlined it during COVID to go to 7.5 million for a sub 5 chapter 11, which is just a simpler chapter 11 than the more complicated, more expensive than a 13, but corporations can't go 13 people. And then the individuals were like, a couple million, 2.75, but it's like no distinction with the debt. Right, that expired June 21st, 2024. Oh. Ridiculous thing. So Congress, when they do these things, they did sunsets. They put a sunset on it to June 21, unless Congress makes it permanent or extends it. So then it was going to Congress in May and June, and then there was one unnamed senator who somehow got to hold it up. One of these Senate perks and BS crap. And so
Menendez.
I'm not sure the person's name, but it was like, could have been him. But, it's, so it expired. So as of June 21, it's back to this ridiculous crap. Now, sub 5 is now 3.0 over 16, whatever it is, because inflation goes up, debt limits. But now you're back to the chapter 13, secured or unsecured stuff. It's ridiculous. I mean, I had some clients that were, I got them in a 13, but they went to qualify. This was like in May or early June. And I told them, you can't count on Congress. You qualify for a 13 actually right now, which is easier than a sub 5, but in a few weeks you won't. So we got the case filed, got it under the wire. So we're doing a 13 with them. I had a chapter 11 client, I mean, more than one, but I had a sub 5 going on that was dismissed at the end of May. So we had 3 weeks, and I got to refile this thing. And I told them what we needed to refile, et cetera, because the judge made clear what had to get done and then come back. But they didn't, get what was needed in time. So now it's past June 21st, and now they don't qualify for something. I still do the Chapter 11 for them, and we're going to refile their case. But now you get the more expensive Chapter 11, the more complicated one. So it's just ridiculous. So Chapter 7, straight bankruptcy, 9 government, 12 farmers, 15 cross borders, international. 11 is usually a corporation, and there's different kinds of Chapter 11. And a 13 is more of a personal, think of it as a personal bill consolidation, right? You pay back some bills in full and other bills either in full or less than 100%. Is there a way to do a 7 and a 13? Yes and no. There's no such thing as doing both, except that there is. And the way you do it is in a Chapter 13, you pay some bills in full. Maybe you're paying other debts 3 cents on the dollar, which is, for example. And in that example, it's like doing a 97% Chapter 7, because even in Chapter 7, some bills aren't discharged. debts incurred by fraud, child support, alimony, intentional torts, taxes sometimes, though there are exceptions where income taxes can be discharged. That's why you have a lawyer. So, that's the high. And a 7, you can only do every 8 years. Secured debt, mortgage, car, for example, you have the right to keep it and pay for it or give it back and owe nothing, right? Maybe your car's underwater, maybe they have insurance, you got right. Smashed up, whatever, maybe the house just want to give back. Then you have unsecured debt, which is 2 categories, priority and non-priority, where some bills, the child support, priority, unsecured debt. Student loans are non-dischargeable, except now they're being easier, which we talk about for a few minutes. But that's also generally unsecured. But the credit cards are unsecured. So basically, like if you were doing a 13, let's say you're in foreclosure. Well, 7's not going to stop the foreclosure, but the 13's gone, right? So you're doing those Chapter 13 because you want to do what's called a cure and maintain plan. The bank won't tell you that you can keep your house. They tell you, like, I have somebody, like, even a guy today calling me, no, they don't want to take, I can go to court and make them take payments. They don't have to take payments if you're in default, but they don't tell you that you can do a 13 and make them do it, right? And take the arrears over 60 months. So how does that work? You file a Chapter 13 reorganization. It's called like a cure maintain plan, which is kind of like a maintain and cure plan, where starting 30 days later, a month later, you're going to make a current mortgage payment. And they're going to take it because they have to. And then the arrears, $8,000, $20,000, $80,000, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? You could pay at 0% interest for over 60 months. So you're making the current mortgage payment like 1/60th of the arrears, and they have to take it. You got to qualify for 13, show the budget, you can afford it, but that's how you do it, right? Now, maybe you have all these other credit cards where maybe you would have done Chapter 7 if you qualified. So maybe you can get rid of that. It depends on the dollar in some situations. So you could actually, because you don't want to do a 7 because that won't save your house. So it's kind of like doing both. You're paying pennies on the one. You're just paying back what you have to on the other. And then the lenders have to file what's called a proof of claim under penalty of perjury. And they have 70 days to file this. So like if it's a mortgage, they have to show an attachment of basically the lost transaction history report from day of default. Now, everyone knows they have a mortgage, they have a servicer, then it's transferred, it gets confusing and records get screwed up. So you look at it to make sure it's right, And the only objection they could really have in the 13 then, the bank, if you're paying the wrong amount, we say it's 13,000 arrears, it's really 18,000, and if it's right, you just modify the plan. If it's not, you file an objection, you go to court, say, Judge, what's the number? They say it's this, I say it's this, and it's a little evidentiary hearing, right? But the automatic stay, the court order stopping the foreclosure is entered. You file Chapter 13, foreclosure stops. They lose jurisdiction instantly. They can't. The lender can't
do. Huh? Kevin, what do most businesses? What do they file?
Depends on what you're doing. I mean, a business can't file a 13. They got to file a corporate. They got to file Chapter 11.
Okay.
I have a case right now that's basically a Chapter 11, but it's a business. The person bought the commercial real estate, and he put his business in there, which is great. And they filed a Chapter 13 to pay it back, and the bank objected. I wasn't the lawyer. He's just paying it back. You know what I'm saying? But the ownership of the property was in a corporation. So they made him do the Chapter 11, which came to me. So that one's kind of simple. It's like doing a 13, but it's corporations, a sub 5. Otherwise, there's other businesses that have employees or not. Trucking businesses, a lot of truck issues. People having problems with in that industry. I see a lot of Chapter 11 filings on lease companies and truck companies and stuff like that. But basically, you file whatever version of Chapter 11 works for you, and to restructure your debt. Now, there's a Chapter 11 liquidation, which is not the most kind, because if you liquidate, you may just go out of business and do it a different way. But you file a liquidation or a reorganization plan as a business. Most everyone's trying to save their business doing a reorganization plan. And how you do a plan of reorganization, The procedure and what you're doing depends on it's a regular 11 or small business or sub 5 or real estate only, different timing aspects. That's what you have a lawyer for. But that's how they do that. Okay. So
we just
that
got
just means
another
what they're
text.
filing. And then so they can file 7, but they're not doing that.
We just got a text in. It's a cute question. How do you get hold of the IRS? I was on hold one time for 2 hours. What is your secret?
And let me guess, you were on hold for 2 hours, and then they gave you a quote, courtesy disconnect, unquote, right? So, and that is so infuriating. They're doing you a favor by
But you
hanging
do
up.
get to them, though, Kevin.
Well, like sometimes, like first thing in the morning or late at night, there's different time zones. So you kind of learn when to call. And then sometimes, like, there's a service some of the professionals have that we hire a company to wait on the phone for us. But, it's a problem. Now, as part of the Inflation Recovery Act a couple of years ago, Congress was giving $80 billion to the IRS, which is now $60 billion to enforce and stuff like that. So some of that money was used to like hiring more people. So trying to improve that. Also, the whole time depends on where are you in the collection process? Are you with the automatic collection system, the ACS, or do you have a revenue agent or officer assigned? Because depending where you are, sometimes you have the revenue officer or agent. Well, you're calling them. I'm saying so you're not going through the ACS, the automated collections. You got your letter. You're calling ACS. You're in the queue, right? And then oftentimes these new hires don't know anything, and then first of all, you get the courtesy disconnect without talking to anybody. Then if you get somebody on the phone and they get tired of you, they either hang up on you or they say, I'm going to put you on hold for a minute, then they hang up on you, right? Or they're going to transfer you, and then you get back into the no man's zone of being. It's just ridiculous. So that's why even professionals, see, a lot of time dealing with the IRS is not easy, so even getting them on the phone is not easy. And once you do, here's another thing. Sometimes you may get the IRS on the phone, us, right? And you're talking to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. Just because they work for the IRS doesn't know that it's the Internal Revenue Manual. That's the rule book, right? I can look things up same as them, so sometimes we know more than them, but sometimes they know more. But it's that's the rule book, right? It's like bankruptcy. There's the code of the bankruptcy code, and then there's also the bankruptcy rules. It's all procedure and what's the rule, what's the procedure, what's the code, and then of course code sections are sometimes can be interpreted different ways. But you know where we're going with it, right? So sometimes you're just wasting your time talking to somebody, and sometimes you just say goodbye and call back, and someone else answers, and they know what they're talking about, or some guy gives you the wrong answer. To start arguing, just call back and get someone who knows what he's talking about. So sometimes that's what we do. Just, okay, thank you very much, goodbye. Let me get on hold again for an hour. Hopefully you get someone who knows what they're talking about instead of arguing with someone who's just going to hang up on you. Otherwise, if you're assigned to an agent or officer, they have a team, there's a manager, there's a supervisor, and we always get their information on the whole team. So if we want to go over someone's head or challenge what they're saying, well, you're saying this, but Internal Revenue Code section, manual code says, boom, boom, they either got to admit it or they got to change their mind.
We're going to do one more bankruptcy question, and then we're going to go into taxes. If someone is married, can just one of the spouses file bankruptcy?
Yeah. So what happens is it's like filing taxes. You must declare if you're married or single, just like filing taxes. If you file taxes, you file it, married filing jointly or married filing individually. Bankruptcy, the same thing. You're married filing together jointly, or you're married filing alone individually. If you do individual, it's fine. You just say I'm married, but I'm only filing, not my spouse, right? So then the person not filing is called the non-filing spouse. because in bankruptcy, like for the budget purposes, or what they call the government means test, or income that determines if you qualify for Chapter 7 or how much you got to pay in a Chapter 13, which we talk about in another show, that is still household income and household expenses. So the non-filing spouse may have some income which is contributing, because you got to show you can make the payments, which is good because they want to show I can make the payments, but they don't want to file because maybe it's your debt or whatever. For example, even if you have a foreclosure, right, and you're both on the house, only one person has to file, right? So then you just say the non-filing spouse. Also on the budget, maybe you got to show, well, there's a lot of income, but I can't really afford more, but we can afford the payment that we're saying based upon the means test. But because the non-filing spouse is not getting the benefit of Chapter 7 or 13, they're not getting discharged. So there's joint debt, they're not getting it, and the other person may have individual debt. So now maybe you're filing Chapter 7 individually, but the person, your spouse, they're not getting discharged from their debt, so they still got a payment, or they got their own car payment. So so it's household budget, so household income, but then it's, hey, we got some expenses on that as well. That's all it is. If you're separated, like living separately, you could change that, but you can't just say, you can't just say I don't want to use the budget, that kind of stuff. So the answer is yes, you can. It's pretty easy.
Now you've got two divisions. You've got your bankruptcy law division and you have your tax relief division. How do they reach you if they want to talk to you about bankruptcy?
Well, for either one, you could call me at 312-853-3100. We have a company also called Noble Tax Relief, which is exclusively just the tax relief. But the law firm gets. You can call me at 312-853-3100 because we do both. It's still me. If I'm doing your tax relief, what happened is in bankruptcy, a lot of clients have IRS debt. Now, maybe they're filing bankruptcy for a different reason, but they got an IRS debt. So some people don't know that could be dischargeable. And you got to analyze, can it be dischargeable through like a 7-point test? And everyone says, okay, I owe X dollars, right? But in reality, you owe X dollars for how many years? And you got to analyze each year because as part of bankruptcy planning, I want to know, are we filing the case now, or can I discharge these taxes each year? And if each year can, or which one can't, when can I, right? So like I had one last month, and they owe like $1 million, and I can get rid of $300,000. But if this was like back in March, if they waited another week, I get rid of another $45,000. You know what I'm saying? So
yes,
you want to know about those kind of things. So that's how you determine the taxes. So it's more work than people think. You want to analyze your situation properly.
Yeah, that's really important. Now, so what made you get into the tax relief?
Oh, okay. So as you were just talking about, so okay. To continue the question you were asking me, because I lost my train of thought. Thank you for getting me back on track there. So in banks, so people have tax problems, right? So that's how we got into it. It's like, okay, sometimes they got to file a case for a different reason. The IRS would acknowledge the automatic stay, and then they say, when you're done, we could talk about resolving it or not, or if it wasn't dischargeable, right? So got rid of people's debt. There are a lot of burden off their shoulders, so to speak. And then it's like, okay, now let's take care of this problem. So we started resolving IRS debt. And there's different programs. And then they started realizing how similar it is. To handle a tax problem, you have to be an attorney or a CPA or what's called an enrolled agent, which is someone going through some specialized courses and learning. Otherwise, you cannot represent people before the IRS. I am also a member of the United States Tax Court, which some people aren't, even for lawyers, some people aren't, okay? So I can go from A to Z, right? So you come to me with a tax issue, First of all, maybe it's dischargeable. Maybe you don't want to file bankruptcy. That's fine. But maybe, oh, I owe $1 million. I don't want to file bankruptcy. Okay, but by the way, it's dischargeable. Oh, really? Maybe I want to, But then again, even being dischargeable doesn't mean you want to file bankruptcy, because if you have a lot of assets, can I protect them? So are you doing a 7 or doing a 13? So that's why you have a professional who has the hat that, not just for all kinds of Chapter 7 and 13 and 11's bankruptcies, but for the tax things, to analyze what are your option or options, the pros and cons of each. How do we resolve the problem? So we started resolving it, and a lot of people just had some tax debt. So there's certain programs with the IRS, offer compromise, installment agreements, and there's some sub programs that we'll talk about in a second. But that's how we got into that. And also, when you're analyzing like the means test and income in a bankruptcy, you use for expenses IRS standards. Okay, well, if you're doing an offer and compromise installment agreement, or you're going to whatever kind of resolution you want to do, it's an operation in cash flow, right? Income, assets, but also expenses, and there's IRS standards on certain expenses. Now, the standards for BK or for tax aren't the same standards, okay? But it's the same game, okay? But those are general rules, right? How do you massage that? Or I say, here's an expense. The IRS says, I'm not counting that as an expense because here's the reason. The car payment's going to be paid in a few months, so you can't take that. But, well, then I get another car. Give me your manager. So you're arguing expenses. Also, assets. Like in bankruptcy, you do what's called a liquidation analysis. What would a creditor unsecured get in a Chapter 7 if you liquidate it? Because they have to get at least that amount back in a 13, and that determines your percentage payback, right? That's one of the ways besides the means test. So then it's like, what percentage, for example, you got real estate. What's it worth? It's worth what someone's willing to pay, but when? Yeah. So you got a house with $300,000, and I got to sell tomorrow. Tomorrow it's not worth $300,000. Now, it's if it's worth that, I have a year to sell it. You try for top dollar, right? Besides the interest rates and things fluctuating, but also if I got to get rid of it in 90 to 120 days or less than 90, a faster sale is going to be a lower price, right? So in bankruptcy, the value, it's not liquidation value, like, hey, I'm selling in 30 days, but it's not long. It's like 90 to 120 days. What's the reasonable time? Not to just dump it, but I'm not waiting a year. It's going to be a discount. What's the value? So maybe it's worth more, but the value is this because of the analysis. In the tax thing, it's the same thing. What's the value? Can we get 70% of it, 80% of it? Is it jointly owned or that kind of stuff? So you're negotiating the value, which is part of the income and expenses, to determine the ability to pay. Because the IRS is simply looking first, if you're trying to resolve a tax issue, what's your ability to pay, right? Because they're actually mandated to resolve issues based upon your ability to pay. Now, I've had some clients like the last few months, it's very similar to bankruptcy. They got every excuse in the book, right? So you can't give assets away or just give it. I had someone call, I gave the property to my children and grandchildren. Well, first of all, you didn't give it to them. You did some dumb thing, like you had commercial property, you did a 100-year lease. Why don't you just give it to them? Because now you still own it, and it's free and clear, and it's yours. And you got a lease that you're paying zero. They're not going to give you a break. You know what I'm saying? Because you're giving your stuff away. Some other lady was given $30,000 to her son, some other person. And, I talked to the IRS, and Kevin, my client, didn't tell me some of these things. Here's what they did. Because they tried they offered compromise before they hired me. They're going to save the attorney fees or legal fees or professional fees and do it themselves. Because they just heard, he thought a form, right? Well, didn't work out pretty well. But she did qualify for other things, but she didn't want to hear. Or if you don't qualify for an installment agreement, offer and compromise, there's an installment agreement, but there's also what they call a partial pay installment agreement, where you're paying less than 100%, which is kind of like doing that. So how do you massage these or compare them? Also, those are general terms. Offer and compromise, different kinds. The usual one is doubt is to collectability, my ability to pay. Kevin, I owe him $300,000, $500,000. I'm never going to pay. Yeah, you probably can't. But if I show that, then they're not going to get that. It's going to be offering. It's going to be a settlement, right? I got to show your ability to pay by the whole analysis, right? Or there's doubt as to liability. Someone called the other day, doubt as to liability. And I told them it's a different kind of representation because you're offering zero, and they're trying to lien your property, and I gotta it's like litigating a case. I gotta prove it's you don't have liability, right? So it's a different kind of case. Then they have what's called currently non-collectible, which means okay, I owe the money, but I just am in such a point in my life right now financially that I just can't afford anything. And then they will back off for maybe up to 2 years, and they'll check, give you a break. But the point is, if you got to resolve the IRS issue, because people never heard of, currently non-collectible. That's just getting on there and getting that approved and getting them off your back. Otherwise, they're going to keep coming, right? Then there's what they call, as part of offering compromise, another subsection is effective tax administration. Okay, you owe the money, but to really make you pay this, given your situation, it's just not fair. You know what I'm saying? You just don't have any money. So they may just give you nothing, right? Then you have how much do you owe? Is there a revenue agent assigned? Is there a revenue officer assigned? Or are you in the automatic collections? Then it's streamline or non-streamline. Do you owe under 50 grand or more than 50 or more than 100? Then that determines on what documents you need to show the IRS or not. Under 50 grand, a streamline, it's easier because you don't got to show documentation. You're showing, a lot less stuff, and it's a lot faster to get done and to get approved. The more different higher amounts you owe and all other kind of stuff. Now you're doing documentation and all kinds of other things. Then you have the installment agreement, and then there's a full pay, and then there's a partial pay. So again, it's like all kinds of chapters of bankruptcy, right? Again, it's very similar. So what do you qualify for? So what we do is we qualify you for everything, or we analyze everything. If you're coming to me for bankruptcy, and if the issue was a tax, yeah, I could pay it back in a 13 or 11, but can I get a better deal? Just avoid bankruptcy, right? Also the reverse. You're coming to me for tax, right? So it's a tax issue, but is it a full pay, partial pay, offer compromise, or can it be discharged in bankruptcy? So we're analyzing the taxes for bankruptcy dischargeability, but also what they call the CSET, right? The collection statute expiration date. Remember in my example for bankruptcy where it's like, hey, you owe X thousands of dollars, but it's really,
right.
To me, what's that? To me, it's like, but it's over how many years? Now I got to analyze each year, can it be discharged? Same thing in tax. Hey, Kevin, I owe $300,000. Okay, but different years. So besides analyzing for dischargeability each year, what's the statute expiration date? It's a 10-year statute of limitations, right? So some of the statutes may have expired. Maybe they're about to. So am I submitting the offer quick or am I not? Am I trying to just slow it down and let some things expire or not? If I set a proposal, can I get payments to a specific year and not have them catch that it's not going to the one that's going to fall off? Because you'd be surprised, right? So that's why you have a professional. Analyze everything, and then even if doing the program, what are the common expiration dates, discharge, timing, the whole thing.
Kevin, it's so important that if a person's going through these IRS problems, that they have someone, an attorney like yourself, taking care of this for them. And because people don't know the right things or wrong things to say, and many times they could actually screw their case up before they even get to you. So it's so important that they call you and you can go through. One of the questions we just got in was about Fresh Start. And is that still available? Yeah,
it's been available since 2011. So on these TV ads, the new Fresh Start initiative just came out. Yeah, 12 years ago, 13 years ago came out. So those are just the companies that are basically scamming you. They're I don't want to name them. I guess get sued here, but you know how they are, the national companies with a fake name, and there's a call center you're calling, and everyone qualifies for offer and compromise without even filling out a form or asking questions, all that kind of crap. And Fresh Start, basically, the IRS tried to streamline and make simpler some of these programs, right? Like there's a multiplier. Like when you do a cash flow analysis for a tax resolution thing. So it used to be a 48 or 60 month multiplier. Now it's 12 or 24, which affects the numbers and how you do things. And then also, like if you want to get a tax lien on your house, it used to be $5,000. Now it'd be $10,000 that you owe before they even put a lien on your house. And then there was other things that were easier, better for the person. So that was the Fresh Start, and it wasn't erasing taxes. It was just, but it was like the offer and compromise program, making it simpler to qualify, and with the multipliers coming down and reducing payments. So that's been around like since 2011. So it's nothing new. So it's still there, yes, but it's not new.
Yeah. I wonder why so many people think that.
Because I get my car, I hear the radio, I hear it too. Mission, a new one. Wow. Who knew? They just came out with this thing, huh? Fresh Start. So the initiative. So yeah, it's just a marketing gimmick on some of these people. Just like I have people call me. Kevin, blah blah blah. How much? How much? I've been talking to you for 5 minutes. I don't even know if you qualify for offer compromise. You know what I'm saying? So it's like well, I'm just calling around. Well, then keep calling, right? Well, I talked to this company and they gave me a quote because they're not going to do anything. Tell you how much can they take from you. You know what I'm saying? I'm an attorney. I deal with facts. What are the facts? I had a phone call today with somebody. I said, I'll analyze your file for X if I have to, because she didn't really know what's going on. But I said, I got to figure out what's going on. She said, well, how will you resolve the problem? I said, well, if I'm talking to you, you don't even know what the problem is yet. I'm not even getting an understanding here. So it's like, I could obtain the IRS file, do a file review, figure out everything, and then tell you some resolutions. But there's a charge for that, but it's not, but that doesn't, I can't quote you on the resolution because I don't know what resolution I'm doing yet. That's all I'm trying to say. So, some people, we try to deal with people. We're not doing volume. I want people who need help and want the help. If you're just calling on the phone, hey, I'm just calling people up. And I got some guys that talked to me for 2 months. Just email me or call me yesterday. Hey, I got the documents. You told me 2 months ago you're doing it on your own and you wanted a quote. Then 3 weeks ago, he's calling me up. He's like, oh, then just tell me. It's like I can do it myself. You can do it yourself. You be your own doctor, you be your own lawyer. So what are you calling me for? I mean, you can do it yourself. It doesn't mean it's going to get a resolution, but go ahead. So then, tell me this. I just want to make sure if I use you, and pay your retainer, I just want to make sure I'm actually going to get something resolved. But again, you're not giving me information, so I don't know what I'm doing yet. I haven't even quoted you a price, so you don't know what the retainer is. And well, then Kevin, just tell me the percentage probability of getting a resolution. Again, I'm not going to make up some number and induce you to hire me. Forget it.
Do you have a website, Kevin?
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to give you some fake 97% success rate. What does that mean? That's all crap, right? I don't know what your case is, but I'll tell you this is a resolution, right? Because that's what the IRS wants. They want you to have a professional attorney, CPA, EA, who knows how to do these things, so they could actually explain to you, and argue with, or negotiate with you on the Internal Revenue Manual and the codes and all the case law that's necessary and how to resolve things. And there's appeal processes and there's U.S. tax court and all kinds of things you could do.
What's your website address, Kevin?
So there's benjaminlaw.com, which includes the tax thing. There's some tabs, all the information. Noble Tax Relief, NOBLE, taxrelief.com is strictly tax resolution. options. But a lot of that stuff on there is included in the other webpage. But the law firm has like, bankruptcy and foreclosure and, defense, all the kind of stuff on there. But Noble Tax Relief is simply tax resolution only. But in reality, I'm the one representing you. So it's, I have what's called a CAF number before the IRS. So if I submit a power of attorney for the IRS, it's me. I'm with the I'm not with the IRS. I'm registered with the IRS as your tax lawyer, whether it's Noble Tax Relief or Benjamin. It's me. Okay. So as far as that goes, it's the same thing. We just have different sites because some people want to go to one site that has this only this, and some want to see the whole thing. Some people get confused if they're on the law firm. There's different things that you do. They don't understand. It's really the same.
Well, we've come to the end of the show. I want people to know you are one of the finest bankruptcy and tax relief attorneys in the city of Chicago. But if you've got a federal tax problem, people just about from anywhere can contact you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, anybody. Yeah, sure. We don't we don't market all over the country, but we're on the web. People find me from other places, and sometimes they hire me, and sometimes we just talk to them, and they wind up hiring someone local, which is fine too. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're just calling me from the website and you're in Nebraska, which I've gotten some phone calls for, I'm happy to talk to you because I could help you. But they don't know if I'm a scammer because I'm in Chicago, the big city, right? So
you're not a scammer.
So I have people like I can help them. They're like, my wife found someone local. That's fine too, because a lot of times people around here, they hire the national company and they get ripped off, and then they call me because I'm local. Are you really local? Well, you can come to my office if you want to. Make an appointment on this walk in, yeah, So we're here, but we don't have to be here. But the point is, I can do it anywhere. It's just a matter of, we don't market ourselves as a national, trying to do 1 million people. We're with this huge company, but I can help anybody anywhere because all we're looking for is people who actually need help and actually want the help. Not just people calling and, give me a fast quote, give me a help resolution. Very similar to bankruptcy. People it's like you're losing your house, but you don't want to spend more than 30 seconds giving me information so I could save you. You know what I'm saying? So, or
Kevin,
tax thing.
thank you so much.
It's 5 years on taxes, but now you want a 5-second resolution. So
Kevin will be back again with us next month. Kevin, thank you so much. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next month.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
That's Kevin Benjamin, great bankruptcy attorney. Hey, that's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.